Good afternoon. That works. Good afternoon. All right. Welcome to today's presentation in MIT Sloan's Dean's Innovative Leader Series. Today, we're just delighted to welcome back to MIT Adriane Brown, who's the president and CEO and COO of, not CEO yet, but of Intellectual Ventures. Adriane is also, as many of you know, a 1991 Sloan Fellows graduate from MIT. Her experience in management is broad and deep. She began at Corning, where she started as a shift supervisor and became vice president and general manager of the Environmental Products Division. She then, after 19 years at Corning, moved on to Honeywell, where she spent 10 years becoming the president and CEO of Honeywell Transportation Systems. During her time, this $5 billion division grew significantly through disciplined introduction of new products. And during Adriane's time at Honeywell, she was known for strong performance with respect to financial results, because if you don't get those, you don't get to stay for 10 years, and developing better customer relationships and a sense of customer needs, and internally with respect to human capital, the development of people as leaders within that organization. It's a great delight to welcome back to MIT today, Adriane Brown. Please give her a warm welcome.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here. And when I thought about the opportunity to speak at the Dean's Innovative Leader Series, I thought, what in the world am I going to talk about? And so I was working out with my trainer one morning, and this was heavy on my mind. And he says, hey, what's on your mind today? And I said, I've got to speak to these students about leadership. And so I've been thinking about my message. I think I've got it down. And he said, well, great. What's your message? And I said, well, it's about genius. He said, oh. I said, not that kind of genius. Because I know here in the halls of MIT, we got a lot of folks at that 140 mark, right? Right? And that's great. However, the genius that I'm talking about, as I was telling my trainer, is that everyone has genius. And it's about how we find that genius, how we learn about it, how we use it, how we leverage it. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And he said, that's fascinating. And then my trainer went off to have a coffee before he met his next client. He brought a book with him, a new book. And he opened his new book to the first page, and I want to share that with you, because that is the first page. He took that photo and sent it to me. So I knew I was onto something talking about genius at MIT. But when I talk about genius and about leadership, I want to tell you it in the context of my life. When I think about growing up in Richmond, Virginia, my dad, who passed away about a year and a half ago at 90 years old, had a very different experience than I am having. And one of the things that my dad wanted this little kid to know is that the world is changing. And I don't actually know, as your dad, how to tell you what to want to be when you grow up. Now, you can tell in that picture, look at the sneakers. I didn't come from wealth, but I came from love. And there was a lot of love growing up in my family, a lot of support, a lot of encouragement. And I think that's a sassy little girl out there who was about to take on the world. But what my dad said to me in those early days was, the world is changing, so I can't coach you on what to be. What do you want to be? I said, well, I want to be a teacher like you. And he said, baby, think of something else. And I said, why? And he said, teachers are fabulous. They're so important, critical. But for my generation, that was really one of the few things that I could aspire to be. And so I want you to figure out something else to do. So I said, okay, like what? He says, I don't know. And it's going to be uncomfortable. Prepare yourself, and you'll figure it out. So I took that on and just kind of said, all right, I'll figure out what I want to be when I grow up. Now, in the meantime, something interesting happened in Virginia. There was an environmental spill into the James River, and it caused massive loss of our environment. And so as I'm in high school and I'm thinking about what I want to do when I go to college, it's just stuck with me because, again, you can imagine I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up based on kind of my early thinking. So I decided when I went to Old Dominion University that I wanted to get my degree in environmental health. So you can see how that factor of the James River led to my discipline choice, because I knew it was going to be more and more important in the world. So I go off to ODU, and I graduate from ODU with this degree in environmental health, and I decided to not go into environmental enforcement, because what I saw is that there was somebody at that plant who made a decision to turn that valve off or to not follow that procedure. And it became very interesting to me that the environment just doesn't get messed up because of, sometimes it's an accident, but oftentimes it is someone who is cutting corners, some relationship between what leadership wants, maybe they wanted to take a shortcut, and someone made that call. But in that particular case of the pollution in the James River, someone made the decision not to follow the protocol. So I decided, as you heard the dean say, to go into a manufacturing environment, because before I could start to enforce it, I wanted to understand what does it take to have a healthy organization, a healthy factory, one where people actually follow the rules. How does it get supported? And I thought Corning was the kind of company that I wanted to be a part of to do just that. So 4 months after graduation, I started out as a shift supervisor. Now, this is one of those Sears photos, you know, back in the day where you go to Sears, and I don't know why I took this picture, but I found this picture and I thought, this is this young woman out trying to explore the world, and people said, you're gonna go do what? I'm gonna be a shift supervisor in a manufacturing plant. We make capacitors and resistors, and that's what I wanna do. Well, why do you wanna do that? I said, because I'm going to get with a great company and I want to see how it all works and how it comes together. So I did. Now, interesting that for those early years, I didn't know there was genius in all of this and how these things were unfolding, but I did learn what was important to me. And in doing so, you start to understand your genius. You start to understand your genius, because it comes from those things that are important to you. Now, as a shift supervisor, I got a chance to hone my skills, because you imagine you're 22 years old, you're going into this factory, there's 3 shifts, and you're there as the boss, and the first thing they said, well, how old are you anyway? I said, well, where I come from, you don't ask a lady her age. And I never told them, because I knew that would become a barrier. Who wants to have some snotty-nosed 22-year-old telling them what to do? But what I did find is that some of those principles that came from my dad and my mom about the power of dignity and respect. That no matter what, you can be nice to people. And I used to see the opposite. Some folks that were my peers, they would go into the shift all gruff and, making people feel bad, putting them down. I was the nice one. And it showed up in the numbers because people felt good. And I saw a direct relationship when people feel engaged, respected, treated with dignity, they will give more than when you push them in the corner and treat them like mushrooms. So I did that. I learned that. And I went on to have a number of jobs in Corning. And one job that I landed, which I thought was just fantastic, after being in manufacturing and sales, I came back and had the opportunity to be the director of the Corning Glass Center. This is 7 years into my career. I jumped 4 levels in the company to take this job. And it was interesting because this was a highly visible job. Everybody knew the Corning Glass Center, important to the community, important to our company, and to New York State, big tourist attraction. And I was like, okay, great, I'm gonna come in and do this job. Well, probably 2 weeks into the job, HR called me to have lunch. And I thought, oh, great. And I'm thinking, it's an interesting call from HR. What's the point of this? And so I went in and I said, I know something's gonna come. It'll be interesting to see what it is. And she said, by the way, there's a message that your boss wanted me to tell you. I'm like, okay. Now, don't be cocky. What, me? Her? Don't be cocky? I'm like, oh, okay, because I'm not a cocky person. I don't think. So this is in my mind. So I meet with my boss, a couple of months later. We're having a one-on-one, and he says, now, he didn't say cocky. He says, don't get a big head. I'm like, I got a big job, but I'm not going to get a big head. So he says, don't get a big head. And I'm thinking, I just heard that through HR. And I said, okay. So I'm taking the feedback, and I'm like, okay. So we have another one-on-one a couple of months later, and he says, now, don't get a big head. I said, hold it right there for a second. This is the 3rd time I've heard this message. Don't get a big head. What am I doing that's causing you to give me this feedback? And he looked at me and he said, oh, you're not doing anything. I really just don't want you to get a big head. So there was a real lesson there that feedback is a gift. It is so important that when you get feedback, do take the time to probe into that feedback, to ask that second question. And what he was saying to me was that it was so important that my demeanor is one of engaging people, one of making people feel welcome, and that dignity and respect thing coming through. And I thought, that's great, but I want to make sure that you don't convert that in this big job to something else. And I thought, okay, but the power of feedback really does help you to understand you. And then I went on, had a great time at the Glass Center, did some marvelous things with my team. And during that time, I fell in love with business. I mean, general management. It was my first GM role. And I thought, this is fabulous. I need to put together a marketing plan. I don't have a clue. I've never taken a marketing course. And it was there that I had this thirst to go back to school and to get my MBA. I knew this was necessary for me to continue to grow my career. So I started to think about, how do I do this? When's the right time? I've been 7 years in the company, 3 at the Glass Center, when and how, and what am I going to do? I get a note from my mentor with a brochure. And he says on this, Adriane, give me a call when you get back from the holidays. I'd like to talk about this. It was a brochure to the Sloan Fellows Program at MIT. And I am through the moon. It's a 1-year program. I get to go, do this. What a wonderful institution. And I'm all ready to go. And then at lunch one day, someone came to me and said, hey, we know the company's sending you to MIT. How do you feel about it? And I said, I'm delighted. This is wonderful. And he said, well, are you sure? And I said, what do you mean? He said, is MIT the right school for you? I said, well, why do you think it's not? And he says, well, is math your strength? Because, it's very analytical, that genius thing. And I said, well, I'll tell you what. Let me think about what you've said. I called the head of the Sloan Fellows Program, talked about it, came out for a visit, decided that MIT was not going to let me down if I didn't let me down. So I saw him again, and he says, well, you've been thinking? I said, yep. He says, and? I said, well, what is it you would have me do? He says, well, you should go to some of these other programs. I said, thanks very much. I'm going to MIT. Now, it's amazing to know that when you walk, when there's a knock on that door, you may be uncomfortable. I actually did a lot of prepping. I hired a tutor. I got an econ book, an algebra book. I just said, I'm not going to go into this not prepared. So by the time I came here in June of 1990, I had gotten myself refreshed because I was not going to have that dude see me fail at MIT. So the thing that you got to do, we talked about understanding your genius, but then you got to leverage your genius. I didn't just take that feedback and not do something with it. I chose to go deep and to put myself back in that uncomfortable space and to take it on. So you got to learn to leverage your genius. Now, coming back from MIT, and that is an actual picture of, we were about to go into a seminar or present something or other. I know that I was coming into what was, in fact, a notorious division. It was notorious for chewing women up and spitting them out. The women even came to me and told me. They said, don't come. That division is awful. But I said, if not me, then who? It may be uncomfortable, but that's what I'm made of. And I like to convert uncomfortable to comfortable. And so I had a great relationship with Bob, the VP GM. And Bob was very excited about bringing me in after Sloan, and I started his business development team. And it was a tough division. It was amazing to me when I started seeing the reality of what chewing and spitting feels like. It was tough. And there was a time when I was really being upset daily by things going on around me. And I had a one-on-one with Bob. And Bob and I were having a conversation. He was so excited about his great team. And I said, I'm glad you think so. And we had a little conversation. Maybe that'll come up in the Q&A. But at the end of that, Bob came to realize the reputation of his division. And he partnered with me to make a change. And as you heard, I went on to become the VP GM of that division. So it takes courage. It takes a little bit of your genius to understand when to push, when you have relationships at the foundation, when you treat people with dignity and respect. I didn't call Bob out in a public thing and make him feel bad about his division, but I did help him to change it. That was a $400 million division. And I'm thinking this is pretty cool, and I'm all excited about it. And after 19 years, boy, I actually felt comfortable again, which is dangerous with me. I can't feel comfortable or something might change. But I got a call from Allied Signal, which shortly thereafter became Honeywell. And it was at that moment where I was ready to see if I could be a big fish in a big pond, because I had become a big fish in a small pond. And so my husband and I talked about it, and I took on this job, went to a turnaround division in South Bend, Indiana, the aircraft wheels and brakes division. And I can tell you that there were 20 months of my life that are a blur because of the fast-paced change that took place at that business. And it happened because of a fantastic team that was either there or I brought a few people in and we figured it out. And it was truly about understanding how to motivate people, how to make them feel a part of the solution, about communication. They didn't know that the business was in trouble. But there were 15,000 employees there many years ago, and this was the last 1,000. And I said to them, I said, if we don't do something different, what makes you think we won't go like the other 14,000? So I'm telling you now, we're on the path to not making it. And I don't know a lot about wheels and brakes. What I could tell you is that they're round, they stop planes, but you guys are the experts. And if you want to turn this around, we'll do it together. And it was through that straight communication that the employees of that business chose to stand for the future of that business, for their community, because it did matter. And that business is thriving and alive and well today. And I didn't know I had a turnaround in me, but boy, was it uncomfortable. And then I moved on and took on several other jobs, moved to Phoenix and took on a $1.2 billion business, engine controls and accessories. When I think of accessory, I'm thinking of jewelry, right? I'm not thinking about, parts on an aircraft, but it turned out that you don't have to be the genius of the aerospace industry in order to lead a business to success. It is those soft skills, it is your engagement with your people, it's the belief that what customers want and need actually matter in your business, and having the right attitude and the approach makes a difference. And those are the things that we solved that allowed us to succeed. I then went on to run this $5 billion automotive business as a corporate officer of Honeywell. And when I got that job, I thought, pinch me. The corporate jet, the whole 9 yards, global business, 38 factories around the world. It was really cool. Built a factory in China. This is just amazing to see that that little girl from Chesterfield County, with the hand on the hip, had what it took to take on that kind of an opportunity. And so through all of those latter experiences, I had to know what was important to me. And it really is about, at that point, owning your genius. And again, it's not that 140, it's all of those other aspects of life that make us rich. Now, I got to the last recession, and I kept thinking that I wanted to do something different. What is she going to do next? And so I found myself thriving to be uncomfortable again. And I came to intellectual ventures because of their vision of what it takes to create new things. It's the invention process. And how invention leads to innovation. How it takes innovation to allow our economy to thrive. And so I go into this organization that's 10 years old with a lot of people at that 140 and above. And it was an amazing challenge to help them expand their thinking, not in the IQ, but in the EQ, because that was the missing ingredient, I think, for the success of the company, which was why Nathan Myhrvold selected someone the likes of me to be the president of his company. It is a sense of purpose that has driven my career. It is a sense of knowing that the work that my team, my company, my peers, that we do, that creates value. And it is through the belief that the world is changing, and how do you stay engaged in it? How do you, in fact, own your genius, leverage your genius, understand your genius in order to make things happen? And it was that allowed me to get some accolades along the way. It's amazing. Who is that woman? And talk about being uncomfortable. The day on Bloomberg Live, I thought I was gonna die. The only other time I had an anxiety attack was in Alan Sinai's econ class. True story. You can ask me about that one, but talk about feeling like you are, on the spot, and will I step forward? Will I be able to perform? Will I be able to deliver? But I can tell you that understanding who you are, getting that comfort, knowing that life isn't easy, the world is changing, you've got to be present with it. And just because something is extremely hard, you guys know this, makes it all the more exciting. Right? Right? No? Well, it was this guy, my dad, back in 1968, who was at Wayne State University working on his master's degree, who said, "The world is changing. make sure that you are preparing yourself to take it on. And who would have known? He suffered with Alzheimer's disease for the last 10 years of his life. And he didn't really appreciate exactly what happened to her. But I know my dad is forever proud that he was able to shape the life of a young woman who has lived her mission, continues to live the mission, and thrives being uncomfortable. So with that, I'd like to stop my formal remarks and open it up for Q&A. There's 2 mics. I guess you guys know the drill, right?
Yep. Can I hand it down here, please?
Hi, my name is Brian. I'm a Master of Finance student here. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. I read recently that 80% of companies that get sued for patent infringement have revenues below $100 million, while 50% have revenues below 10. I was wondering if you could talk briefly about intellectual ventures' reputation as a patent troll, and whether you think the patent system is broken or is an effective capital market. Thank you.
Brian, thank you so much for the opportunity to share this with this wonderful audience. Intellectual Ventures has never, ever sued a small company in the categories that you have identified, never. And it's interesting that the folklore about us would suggest otherwise. I've even gone to a luncheon in Seattle and sat at a table with some people and introduced myself, and the woman next to me said, "Oh." I'm like, "Really?" And I said, "So do you know me or my company?" She says, "Well, it was about intellectual ventures." And I said, "I'd love to know what prompted your reaction." She says, "Well, you guys sue small companies." And I said, "I'm so glad you shared that with me because it's patently false. It's just untrue. We do not. We have $6 billion in committed capital. That means investors have said that we believe in your business model to buy patents, to create patents on your own, or to leverage your network of over 4,000 vetted inventors in order to try to create this new market for invention. And in doing this work, they believed enough in our model to commit $6 billion. We've poured nearly $3 billion back into the economy by doing those things, buying patents, building patents, or partnering with patents. And when I joined IV in 2010, they had done the invest in invention part, but they hadn't yet worked on the monetize invention part, had not seen success in the monetization. And that was one of the key goals that the company had when I joined was, okay, how are we gonna make money now? We have to get a return for these investors. And so we started the work. I started to build the collection of the company as a whole instead of its parts, which were very strong and very siloed, to really begin to make offerings to customers that would work. And in fact, we ended up having a fantastic year, closing licensing deals with very large top 100 companies, and went on in 2011 to do the same thing. However, in 2010, we realized that so many of our customers said, "You know what? You're going to have to sue us. I can't get my CEO or my general counsel's attention. You know, this is before all the patent troll stuff really started." And so much to our disappointment that it would take us enforcing our rights in court, which is what companies do when there's a dispute, right? People or companies, when there's a dispute, they take it to court. So we launched 3 lawsuits against 9 companies. And in that time, that became the big change. It was a big deal that in December of 2010, we took that action. And we've continued to be very thoughtful about reinforcing our patent rights. But to sue a small company on some set of patents you have when they are small makes no sense because there's no money there. I mean, the royalty rate, it just wouldn't make sense. So it's kind of comical that we get accused of the small company thing when that's not where we're exercising our rights. We're trying to do it with companies who have significant infringement and where we believe that our inventors and our investors are due for their investment. So is the patent system broke? In 2010, when I got there, patent reform had been going on for 6 years. In 2011, the America Invents Act was signed into law. This was a 7-year effort to fix some things like, is it first to file or first to invent? You know, there were some really basic things that came about. And we were satisfied. We didn't get everything that we wanted, but for us, the most important thing was to get all of this uncertainty off of the table. Fix it, whatever it is, get it done. Covered business methods was a big issue in the America Invents Act. And so once all of that settled down and they're now working, the patent office is working to enforce these laws and to set the rules in place, I guess there were some people on the other side of the argument that weren't happy. And patent reform showed up again in 2013, where the White House comes out and says, hey, these patent trolls got to be stopped. And we saw 13 bills on the congressional floor about patents again. With all of the issues in the US, you mean to tell me that there are 13 times that you're going to try to get patent reform back on the table? So what happened between 2011 at the end of the year and 2013 was the political influence of patents. And it was no longer about patent rights, it was about politics. And it is politics because there are some companies out there that want to be able to use whatever technology they want to without having to have those rights being paid for that are behind all of this new patent reform. And I think it is a scary thing for us as a country because patent rights are really tied to economic value. Today, 1/3 of US GDP is associated with patented technologies. And it's easy to discount a patent today. It is easy to take on and challenge a patent today. And these are the outcomes of this work that is now undermining what I think is a fundamental system, not only in the US, which leads in patents, but also around the world, and the implications that that will have globally is something that we will see over time. So I'm very concerned about this latest effort against patents, against inventors, and against inventor rights. And the last bill that died in Congress when the Senate didn't pass it, the US House did. The reason that the Senate said no, that they would not move this bill forward, is because they said for industries like biotech, pharma, universities, this would be a crushing blow to their businesses. And because there's no compromise on the tech side, we cannot move this bill forward. So it'll probably come back again in full force, and those factors will not have changed. The question is, what will happen? So thank you for the opportunity to share that with this audience.
Got another question right here. Hi, I'm Zach. I'm a 2015 MBA, and I'm sure you get a lot of questions about intellectual ventures, and they might be the first question sometimes. And I was wondering how you seem like you have a very positive attitude, how you sort of think about that when that happens, and do you try to proactively address it, or is it something that you find often happens? It just seems like a switch from a place like Honeywell or other places like that.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable, and I've kind of tried to think about this as I've thought about every problem. You know, what's at the foundation? What do you do? What's the best way to get to the next step? And kind of really tried to move this forward. Intellectual ventures is vilified. We're the #1 patent troll. I'm wearing my troll suit today. Do you like it? It's just amazing that that there has been such a successful effort on the side of our foes who just don't want to see patents be strong. And the thing that we've decided is that we can talk about ourselves and get on the defensive, kind of get on our back heels and fight everything, one at a time. It's just going to make us look worse. And when you think about the fact that our company has invested in inventions that have, to date, 4 spin-out companies, 1 in nuclear power, the next generation of nuclear energy, backed by a wonderful set of investors, including Bill Gates. We have, through our investment in metamaterials, have 3 spin-out companies. One, a new satellite antenna. The second, building a technology for security imaging. So imagine going through the airport and not having to do this, or going through any high security building where you have to kind of disrobe to get through. And the third, that is going to be launched in a matter of weeks, that is going to change how we use radar. These are 3 companies that we have launched. We have a number of companies by which they have come to us to tap into our inventing capability through our RFI, a request for invention. They have a problem. We go out into this network of 4,000 inventors with this request, and they invent around it. And so we bring back the best ideas. We pay the inventors for the selected ones. And in some cases, because these inventors are placing a bet on the future, if the product or service or invention turns out to be something big, they get a back end. So we're trying to focus that. But when these companies come out and talk about those things, it takes a long time to get from the idea to the thing, right? And so we're trying to nurture the idea part to get it to the thing, and it takes time. It takes years. So we knew it was just a matter of time before our truth would be told, and better told by others. Our Global Good Fund has worked with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and invented a device that keeps vaccines cold for up to 50 days. So imagine when you're going into these health posts where there's unstable electricity. They used to carry styrofoam boxes with a bungee cord on the back of a scooter with some ice in it that wasn't going to last very long, and they're actually inoculating kids with vaccines that are dead. And I look at the work that we're doing. We did that. We're working with smallholder farmers and came up with something as simple as a Mozzie can. I can't really call it an invention. It was the development of a product, specially for them, so that companies like Nestle, who need dairy farmers around the world to produce high-protein milk from healthy cows, and to have it transported from the cow to wherever it's got to go in a way that keeps that milk as fresh as possible. It's our work that's doing that. And we're giving those projects not to make them by IV. We don't want to take away our core competence. That's not our thing to make it. But we work with partners to actually build and carry on this with a license to support the developing world. And actually, if they want to go into the first world, they can. We just adjust the rate by which they use our license. But we're doing fabulous things, and the more and more those things come out, you're going to say, those are the patent trolls? Are you kidding me? Look what good stuff they did. I just hope that we can have enough time before people screw up the patent system to actually continue to take these projects forward and to make a difference in the world, because that's what we're out to do. I mean, the things that we're looking at are inventions in food science. We have some of the most powerful 3D printing patents out there. So you know people hate us for that. Oh boy, we've made some people nervous because of some of our inventions there. So it's okay to be not liked. It makes me sad, more than uncomfortable. Sad that those who are against us have been so successful. But we're trying not to use our investors' money to do a marketing campaign. We'd rather stick to our core and try to get there fast enough. So thank you for your question.
Hi, Michael Siegel, Sloan School. Could you comment on how the CBM, particularly around 101, is affecting the current market for patents and your business model? The 101 issue around abstract ideas and patents, and how many patents are being overturned at the PTAB office with regard to that.
And how that's affecting our business?
How that's affecting the market in general and also your business. I'd be very interested.
So covered business method patents are, as he said, those that, it's a little more abstract. And it's amazing that when you think about software and what it takes to code and to create these products, that now we're going to be asking the USPTO to make a call as, is this patentable or is this not patentable? Is this legitimate or not? It's not that there weren't inventions there, but now there's a belief that certain things cannot be covered. And then there was the Alice case, which in some cases software is not going to be patentable. And we actually went through our portfolio and said, is this going to affect us or not? Is this going to cause a major problem for our business? And the answer is no. However, one of our early cases did have a covered business method patent, and it got thrown out. And we said, OK, well, here's some more patents. We have 40,000 patents, so it's just a matter of finding a substitute one that was not a covered business method. So we worked our way through that, and we're not seeing that as something devastating to our business model. However, I will say that in my experience from the kinds of companies that made things, we made products. I made the catalytic converter for the auto industry globally. And that's material science. It's manufacturing science. It's in the core. And today, when I see how many companies are launched, spun out because of an app, you don't need a patent to have your app be successful, because it's just a matter of time that it's going to live, and likely can be easily copied. So you're just trying to get out there first. So it's okay that there is this movement to find the next app so the couple of developers can have their IPO and have one of these large companies buy them and pay a huge IPO price, and these guys go off into the sunset, right? So I mean, that has been such a big force. Yet in my days in aerospace, we were trying to figure out how are we going to cover the products and the software and the chips to last 30 years, and planning obsolescence from the day when we're developing it for 5 years and then 30 years of life. So I see this as a significant change, not just because of CBM, but in the whole divide between the app generation versus the things that we touch and mold and shape and actually create the product or service from. So it's interesting. I've tried to open up my thinking around this, but I will tell you that at another cocktail party, someone was saying, oh, they worked for Zillow. And Zillow is so upset that there is a patent on putting a house on a map. And the USPTO awarded a patent for that, putting a house on a map. Okay? And Zillow said, boy, I shouldn't be infringing that. And you know what? I'm not mad at them for not liking it. But that was the position that the USPTO took. So my position, and I've shared this with Secretary Pritzker, Secretary of Commerce, that the USPTO must be fully funded. If you don't have the brain power, the training, and the funding at the US Patent Office to be able to look at these new concepts, I mean, the whole point of it, it's new, right? The patent examiner didn't invent it, but they've got to get their head around it. It is so critical that the Patent Office attract top talent to be able to evaluate these ideas and concepts and make the call then, because it should not be that someone spends their life work, pays all the fees to the Patent Office, work with the Patent Office, get their patent awarded. This is like one of the best days of their life. They got their patent. And then to find some company down the line is using their patent and then says, I don't want to pay you for the rights of it, so I'm going to challenge it, and then the patent goes away after they've paid maintenance fees and on and on and on. That destroys the power of the inventor. And that is more where our company tries to take a stand, because we think it actually matters in the world that people are incentivized to, and when I say incentivized, that they feel it is a valuable thing for society to actually invent. So we stand for the inventor.
Hello, I'm Abhishek, MBA 2015. My question for you is that when you first got buy-in from Bob, what are the specific action steps you took so as to change the culture at that division?
Oh, thank you for asking for my Bob story. So here I am running new business development in the anti-women division, and Bob says, oh, we just hit our number for the year. I've been in there. This is 6 months after Sloan School. Our team came together. We've got such a fantastic team. And I'm looking at him like, you gotta be kidding me. So I just said, Bob, I'm glad you think so. And then Bob said, yeah, we got a great team. And as if the comment just went over his head. And I asked him, I said, well, no, Bob, I'm glad you think so. And he said, I don't have a great team? I said, no. I said, let me give you 3 stories. And I told him 3 stories of things that had been classic. The Invisible Woman, you know, I have a project and someone takes credit for it. I mean, just the typical stuff that I wasn't believing was happening to me. Are you kidding me? And I said, now, the last thing I want you to do is go to my colleagues and my peers and tell them, be nice to Adriane. You guys aren't being fair, because that would have just been laughable. I said, don't do it. And I said, but you know what, Bob? My biggest problem is you. And don't ask me how I had the nerve to say it at that moment, but I said, it is you. He said, me? I said, yes. I said, this is about leading by example. I said, we had a big problem with one of our customers. And you said to your secretary, Alice, go get Bob, go get Cliff, go get Dave. I said, you didn't say, go get Adriane. You didn't demonstrate your personal commitment to me. You told me you thought I could be a business leader in your division, leading that catalytic converter business. I said, you said that, but you are not giving me the insight, the discussions, the participation, the growth in order to do that. So you are not leading by example, because if you don't value me, why should they? And he was like, oh, okay. And he said, give me 3 things to do. I said, the next time you go into a meeting and you know I should be there, and we had this formal meeting thing, you had to put your meeting agenda and participants and all that together. We were in that realm. And when the conversation gets going, and I'm not in the room, because I am not going to invite myself into another meeting. I was doing that all the time. Meetings going on, I'm inviting myself in. You have a Alice, no, first to the guys, where's Adriane? Why isn't Adriane in this room? You do that, Bob. You get me in that room. You make Alice come get me and bring me in, and it'll be a big thing. You do that once, it may be enough, but certainly twice, and that is fixed. And I said, and you personally, when you have a big problem, give me the experience. You're telling me I can go be a business leader, but you're not awarding me those soft opportunities to be a part of the listening and the learning. You've got to do that. And I told him one other thing, I don't remember what, but I gave him 3 things to do, kind of just owning it. You cannot expect a woman to come into a division that has this kind of reputation and thrive without support. Own it. And he did. When I became the VP GM, not the VP GM, when it was a position before that, the business director of the catalytic converter business for the Americas and Asia. That was a $200 million business. I went to him, and he was all excited. He says, Adriane, you got the job. Because he and I had been discussing, because it was being discussed with the executives of the company about who was going to get that job. And he and I had talked, and I had prepped him on how to help me get the role. I said, look, if you don't think I can do it, go pick somebody who you think can do it. But when you're talking about going to Japan, how many times have we sent the ugly male American in, okay? I'm going to go and get trained on how to do business in Japan. I'm going to go read up on it. I'm not going to be the ugly American going in. So my problem isn't going to be the Japanese. My problem is going to be you guys. If you're willing to stand with me, if you're going to support me, then give me the job. If you don't think you're going to support me, then give it to somebody else. And that was my message back to him. He came back with the job. I said, okay, now you got something else to do. He said, what? You have to go to Bob and Cliff and Dave. And you have to tell them in advance that you and our CEO have selected me for this job. And you have to tell them that they better love it or shut the hell up. And I mean that because the power that they had, and I want you to think about the power that you will have as you rise up in your corporate and in your entrepreneurial work. The power that you have to help people either thrive or not. I said, those guys can't even take pillow talk and talk about what a dumb decision they think you made. Because they're going to be, and people are going to say, what do you think about Adriane getting that job? And they're going to go, diversity, you know, or some other thing that diminishes the energy behind someone taking on a bold new role. I said, I do not need to be cut off at the knees before I get started. So you need to shut them down, not even pillow talk, complaining about me in that role. And he said, oh, I can do that. Oh, yeah, so he went to the president of the company, and they called those guys in one at a time. And not only told them that they wanted their support, but they demanded. If she does something wrong, if she's off, then you come to us, go to her, but you are not allowed to diminish her authority and responsibility in this new role. And to one of them, who was the worst offender, they said, and you will not become a vice president if you don't do this. It's that important to us. So it was calling people out and standing people into account to not just give the words, because it's so important, the subtleties that can take people out of getting something done. And I can tell you, none of this works if there isn't performance and if there isn't relationships. The reason Bob and these guys believed and stood behind me was because I got stuff done. And I tried to do it with dignity and respect for everyone. And I can tell you that those soft skills, along with the power and the commitment to drive results for your business, is what ultimately makes the difference. So I have time for one last question. Okay, and I'll try to give me a quick question, and I'll try to give a quick answer.
Hopefully it's a quick one. I'm Dushyant, I'm a Sloan Fellow, 2015, so it means a lot to have you come back and talk to us. So quick question around difference in recognition and respect for intellectual property across the world. What are sort of the most thorniest issues where there are differences across regions in respect for intellectual property? And over what period of time can we expect to actually overcome these differences? 3 years, 5 years, 10 years?
Oh, I think it's going to be a long time before we see the differences change. But let me just give you China. Back when I was in the transportation CEO role at Honeywell, my team came to me with 2 boxes. These were commercial vehicle turbochargers. They said one is ours and one is a fake. Which one? So I looked at the product. They opened the boxes. They took them out. I looked at them. I said, that's the fake. They said, how did you know? I said, the box wasn't as strong as our box. But the turbocharger from the fake would last for 9 months in distress and actually fail on the road for a commercial vehicle. They all had the same serial plate because they copied that exactly from the knockoff. With our 1-800 number or whatever customer service number, we had a massive problem with fake products. And we worked with the Chinese government, hired agents who went in and actually destroyed the molds of companies. They were investigators to try to help protect us. So it was interesting that China actually was very supportive to help stop this because it was hurting their economy. I mean, trucks beside the road broken down, whatever, was not good. We did a number of those at Honeywell. And by the way, when I was in China, I told my team, I'm going to say this once, and I will not say it again. Do not buy any knockoff fake products. I don't care if it's a DVD or a Gucci bag. I will not be two-faced about this. We're going to stand for intellectual property rights and property rights, so we're going to do this as a team. So you will not find fake DVDs in my house. You will not find fake Louis Vuitton. But it's about integrity here. But today, China is shifting to a much more patent-oriented, because they're moving from copiers to innovators and inventors. So I think you're going to see a shift in China happening pretty quickly. The interesting thing, though, is if we were to go in with a heavy hand and try to enforce IP rights in China, where we don't really have the coverage, it's only when those Chinese companies want to come into the US market, where we do have property rights, do we really have a strong standing. And we're going to try to continue to work with the Chinese to do that. I think as our market becomes more and more attractive, the likes of Alibaba coming in, you're going to see opportunities where intellectual property rights in the US are going to become more important. You will see Europe, I think, start to rise in its impact, because the German courts are very fast and efficient. And you're starting to see companies use that market as a place to carry out rights if they don't want to do so in the US. And also one of the actions that came out of the patent change is that stopping companies at the border for infringement is become much tougher to do. So there are lots of things that are changing. I think that in the next year we'll see what happens in the US, but if we weaken patent enforcement, as some would have us to do, I'm truly concerned about the impact that it will have over time economically, because companies will not be able to invest in those things that give them competitive advantage from the likes of a patent at the same rate they've been able to do so in the past. It will become another method will have to be developed. So I just want to say thank you all for your time. I know some of you have to get to class. It's been my pleasure to be here with you, and I hope to come back and read about you and see you in the future. Thanks.